English.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of English Mastery. I'm Jason, and with me, as always, is my wonderful co-host, Julia.
Hello, it's great to be here, Jason. We've got a really important topic to dive into today, don't we?
Absolutely, Julia. Today, we're tackling something that every English learner struggles with at some point: pronunciation. Our episode is titled, Master English Pronunciation, Stop Making These Everyday Errors.
Oh, this is going to be so helpful for our listeners. Pronunciation can be a real stumbling block for many language learners.
You're right about that. And it's not just about sounding native-like. Good pronunciation is crucial for clear communication and building confidence when speaking English.
Exactly. When you're confident in your pronunciation, you're more likely to speak up and engage in conversations. It's a real game changer.
So true. Before we dive into the common mistakes and how to fix them, why don't we talk a bit about why pronunciation is so important?
Great idea. Well, first and foremost, clear pronunciation helps you be understood. If you mispronounce words, even if your grammar is perfect, people might struggle to understand you.
Absolutely. And it goes both ways. Good pronunciation also helps you understand others better. When you know how words should sound, it's easier to recognize them in conversation.
That's a great point. It also reduces the chances of embarrassing misunderstandings. I remember a student once telling me about a time they meant to say they were excited about a project, but their pronunciation made it sound like they were exited, as in, they left.
Oh no, that's exactly the kind of situation we want to help our listeners avoid. Pronunciation can also impact how others perceive you, especially in professional settings.
Definitely. While having an accent is perfectly fine and can even be charming, consistent pronunciation errors might make you appear less competent or educated than you really are.
Exactly. So, shall we start breaking down some of the most common pronunciation mistakes we see English learners make?
Let's do it. One of the biggest challenges for many learners is vowel sounds. English has quite a few vowel sounds that don't exist in other languages.
Right, you are. A classic example is the difference between ship and sheep. Many learners struggle to distinguish between the short I sound in ship and the long E sound in sheep.
Oh, that's a tricky one. How about we give our listeners a little exercise to practice this? Repeat after us. The sheep is on the ship.
Great idea. Listeners, really focus on making the I in ship short and the E in sheep long. The sheep is on the ship.
Another vowel sound that often causes trouble is the schwa sound. It's that unstressed sound you hear in words like about or computer.
Yes, the schwa is everywhere in English. It's actually the most common vowel sound, but many languages don't have it, so learners often overemphasize these unstressed syllables.
A good phrase to practice the schwa sound is a cup of coffee. Listen to how we say it, a cup, coffee. Those a and of use the schwa sound.
Excellent. Example. Moving on from vowels, another major area of difficulty is word stress. English is a stress-steamed language, which means some syllables in a word are emphasized more than others.
That's right. And getting the stress wrong can sometimes change the meaning of the word entirely. Take record, for example. If you stress the first syllable, record, it's a noun meaning a disc for playing music. But if you stress the second syllable, record, it's a verb meaning to make a recording.
Great example. Here's another one, desert, meaning a dry, barren area versus dessert, the sweet treat after a meal. They're spelled almost the same, but the stress makes all the difference in pronunciation.
Absolutely. A good rule of thumb for our listeners is that in two-syllable nouns, the stress is usually on the first syllable, while in two-syllable verbs, it's often on the second syllable.
That's a helpful tip, Julia. Of course, there are exceptions, but it's a good starting point. Now, shall we talk about those pesky silent letters?
Oh, silent letters. They can be so confusing for learners. Words like knife, psychology, island, they're full of letters we don't pronounce.
Exactly. The K in knife, the P in psychology, the C's in island, all silent. It's no wonder learners find these challenging.
And don't forget about Wednesday. That first, to throws so many people off.
Oh, good one. Wednesday is actually pronounced Wednesday. English spelling doesn't always match pronunciation, which can be really frustrating for learners.
Absolutely. Another tricky area is consonant clusters, when you have two or more consonants together, without a vowel between them.
Right, like in words such as strengths or sixths. These can be tongue-twisters even for native speakers.
Definitely. And then there are sounds that don't exist in many other languages, like the taint sound in think or this.
Oh, the dreaded the. So many learners substitute it with s, f, or t sounds. But getting it right can really improve your overall pronunciation.
Absolutely. Okay, now that we've covered some of the major pronunciation challenges, shall we talk about some techniques to improve?
Great idea! One of the most effective ways to improve pronunciation is through minimal pairs practice. These are words that differ by only one sound.
Right, like bit and beat, or ship and sheep that we mentioned earlier. Practicing these helps train your ear to hear the differences and your mouth to produce them.
Exactly. Listeners, try this. The sheep on the ship bit the beat. It's a silly sentence, but it's great practice for those vowel sounds.
Another crucial technique is paying attention to mouth positioning. The shape and position of your mouth, lips, and tongue make a huge difference in pronunciation.
Absolutely. For example, to make the E sound in sheep, your lips should be spread wide, almost like you're smiling. But for the oo sound in boot, your lips should be rounded and pushed forward.
That's right. And for the teach sound, you need to put your tongue between your teeth. It feels strange at first, but it's essential for getting that sound right.
Great point. Listeners, don't be afraid to exaggerate these mouth movements when you're practicing. It might feel silly, but it really helps train those muscles.
Absolutely. Another great technique is shadowing listening to native speakers and trying to mimic their pronunciation in real time.
Oh, shadowing is fantastic. It helps not just with individual sounds, but also with intonation and rhythm, which are crucial for natural-sounding English.
Definitely. And speaking of rhythm, English is a stress-teamed language, which means stressed syllables occur at regular intervals. This gives English its characteristic music.
Right, and this is different from many other languages which are syllable-timed. A good way to practice this is with limericks or other rhythmic poems.
Oh, I love that idea. Here's a classic limerick to practice with. There once was a man from Nantucket who kept all his cash in a bucket. His daughter, named Nan, ran away with a man. And as for the bucket, Nantucket?
That's perfect. Listeners, try reading that aloud, really emphasizing the stress syllables. You'll start to feel the rhythm of English.
Another fun way to practice is with tongue twisters. They're challenging, but they're great for improving your agility with English sounds.
Absolutely. Here's a classic one. She sells seashells by the seashore. It's great practice for the shish and s sounds.
And don't forget, how much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? That one's great for the W and chuck sounds.
These are fantastic, Julia. Listeners, don't worry if you can't say these perfectly at first. The point is to practice and have fun with it.
Exactly. Pronunciation improvement is a journey, not a destination. The key is to keep practicing regularly.
That's so true. And there are so many resources available now to help. Podcasts like ours, YouTube videos, pronunciation apps. Learners have a wealth of tools at their fingertips.
Absolutely. One technique I always recommend is recording yourself. It can be uncomfortable at first, but it's so helpful to hear what you actually sound like.
That's a great tip. You can compare your pronunciation to native speakers and really pinpoint areas for improvement.
Definitely. And don't be afraid to ask for feedback from native speakers or teachers. Most people are happy to help if you ask politely.
Great point. Now, shall we talk about some specific exercises our listeners can do to improve their pronunciation?
Absolutely. Let's start with a simple minimal pairs exercise. Listeners, repeat after us. Ship, sheep. Bit, beat. Full, fool. Poo, poo.
Great choices. Really focus on the difference in the vowel sounds. Now, let's try some words with the tricky TH sound. Think. 3. Mouth. Breathe.
Excellent. Remember, your tongue should be between your teeth for these sounds. Now, let's practice some words with silent letters. Knife. Psychology. Island. Wednesday.
Perfect. And now, for some challenging consonant clusters. Strengths. Sixths. Texts. Twelfths.
Those are tricky. Take your time with these, listeners. It's okay to break them down into smaller parts at first.
Absolutely. Now, how about we give our listeners a full sentence to practice that incorporates many of these challenging sounds?
Great idea. Here's one. On Wednesday, the psychologist thought thoroughly about the strength of the island's ecosystem.
That's perfect. It's got the silent deed in Wednesday, the silent P in psychologist, the DH sounds, and the tricky consonant cluster in strength.
Listeners, try repeating that sentence a few times. Don't worry about speed, focus on pronouncing each word clearly.
Exactly. And remember, improvement takes time. The key is consistent practice.
Absolutely. Even just 10 minutes a day can make a big difference over time.
That's right. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. They're a natural part of the learning process.
Exactly. Every mistake is an opportunity to learn and improve.
Well said, Julia. As we start to wrap up, do you have any final words of encouragement for our listeners?
I'd say, don't get discouraged if you don't see immediate results. Pronunciation improvement is a gradual process, but with consistent practice, you will definitely see progress.
Absolutely. And remember, having an accent isn't a bad thing. The goal isn't to sound exactly like a native speaker, but to pronounce words clearly so you can communicate effectively.
That's such an important point, Jason. Your accent is part of your identity, and it tells a story about your background and experiences.
Exactly. The key is to be understood clearly, not to erase your accent completely.
Well said. And with that, I think it's time to bring this episode to a close. Jason, would you like to sum up what we've covered today?
Of course. Today, we've discussed why good pronunciation is important for effective communication in English. We've covered common pronunciation mistakes, including issues with vowel sounds, word stress, silent letters, and difficult consonant sounds.
We've also shared practical techniques for improving pronunciation, such as minimal pairs practice, paying attention to mouth positioning, shadowing native speakers, and using tongue twisters and limericks for practice.
And we've emphasized the importance of consistent practice, recording yourself, and not being afraid to make mistakes as you learn.
That's right. Remember, listeners, every time you practice, you're taking a step forward in your English journey.
Absolutely. And we hope this episode has given you some valuable tools and encouragement to keep improving your pronunciation.
Before we go, we'd love to hear from you. What pronunciation challenges do you face? What techniques have you found helpful? Let us know in the comments or on our social media.
Yes, please do share your experiences. And if there are any specific pronunciation topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, we'd love to hear those suggestions too.
Great idea, Jason. Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for listening, everyone.
Yes, thank you all. Keep practicing, keep improving, and most importantly, keep enjoying your English learning journey. Until next time,
Goodbye, everyone.
bye-bye.
Thank you for watching.
If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends.
Stay tuned for more exciting English lessons. See you in the next video. Keep learning and keep improving with LK English.